Hello and welcome to the second episode of Media Lite, where we talk about the media that we care about right now. I'm your host, Randy Elaine, and joining me as always is my beloved co-host, Kris Ingersoll. Kris, we took a whole week off from podcasting together, and I just want to know how you've been.
So good, Randy. It wasn't the same without you last week. I didn't know what to do with myself come Thursday evening, so I'm grateful to be back with you now. Not at our usual time, but not for a usual episode either. Excited for our second installment of Media Light. How you been, bud?
Oh, I've been great. I had a couple of work commitments that took up a lot of time last week. I got a snazzy new haircut since I last saw you.
You look
I
sharp.
thought, I thought about going for the Clint Barton. I had my picture of the Ronin, all printed out to show the barber, but ultimately went with my classic cut instead.
I don't know if you can tell, but I'm growing into my Nomad era Captain America at the moment. I've never had my hair this long in my life.
I think it's a great look for you, man. You're really taking that Boy Scout look and putting your own edge on it. I think it's going to be perfect. So I guess this is as good a time as any for me to tell our audience why we're making all these Avengers references. Normally on an episode of Media Light, we would be diving into a new piece of media that made a huge impression on us and that we are hoping is going to become a part of our personalities moving forward. But this year we're focused a little bit more on a conversation because we are currently recording this episode to air on May 10th, 2024, which is 5 years and 2 weeks after Avengers Endgame hit theaters for the first time. And Kris and myself are both a couple of film nerds. In addition to our podcasting, we listen to a lot of podcasts. We're always reading up on our favorite heroes and directors and actors and actresses. And we've just been so caught up in the buzz and the nostalgia for this movie that we just decided we had to talk about it. Kris, this was your baby. You were the one that really pushed us in this direction, and I was so happy that you did. But why did you convene this edition of Media Light in honor of the Avengers?
Well, I mean, first of all, I think I already revealed that I missed you last week. Couldn't have gone 2 weeks in a row. But that aside, I think you nailed it. There was something in the air, right? Knowing the anniversary was coming up, I cannot believe a full blip has gone by since the movie came out. And so, it felt right to revisit. It was a time to celebrate. I think I let the Winter Soldier anniversary come and go recently without having to make too much of a fuss about it, but I did rewatch. And so this time
Mm-hmm.
around, I wanted to catch the heat.
Kris, much like Thanos, I think it is inevitable. Someday we are going to do a full Media Lit episode on this film or this series of films. But tonight, we've got to be on our best behavior. This is a Media Light, so we've got to do our best to keep it focused. And anyone who has looked at our runtimes and listened to us knows that we are nothing if not a couple of earnest dudes who love to share our emotions. And this is an emotional film. Off mic just before the episode, we couldn't help but talk about the theme of healing across this entire film. But before we get too sappy and sentimental, we thought it would be fun to just have each of us sneak in one of our favorite bits or jokes from Avengers Endgame to acknowledge that in addition to being a moving, emotional film, it's also a heck of a lot of fun. So, Kris, can you hit me with one of your favorite jokes or bits from Endgame?
Um, pure lightheartedness. I think we all love Tony's nicknames, and there are plenty throughout the film.
Mm,
He hits Thor with a quick Lebowski drop, but I think it was his Ant-Man nicknames on the time heist that really got me because he rattles off a few good ones, and they're always so just in the moment. Thumbelina, Stuart Little, and then finally, in a moment of frustration, Hissan. No one does
yes.
it. No one does it better than Tony Stark when it comes to nicknames.
Well chosen. Yeah, Piss Ant was just chef's kiss perfection. Absolutely loved that. Again, there's so much to go with. It does often come back to our guy Tony Stark. But I'm gonna say that my kind of like dark horse MVP for this film is Rocket Raccoon. Uh, and we got two of my best bits. That's right. I've packaged them together instead of calling it a smuggle. But my number one joke would just be when our Avengers team has successfully completed the time heist. They've got all the Infinity Stones gathered together. Tony Stark has constructed the Iron Gauntlet. Uh, all of the stones come into place as they stand around this device, and Rocket just goes boom and just kind of chuckles to himself, making everyone jump at this intense moment.
Randy, I wrote that down. That was one of my backup top choices because I agree with you. I'm not sure that it will reflect in my picks, but I saw that dark horse potential for Rocket as an MVP of the film. But I also felt similarly about Nebula.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Again, that we have to do an Avengers pod one day because I've got a lot to say about Nebula and her arc in this film that I may not be able to represent so well in my picks overall. But yeah, man, great bit. Rocket, just what a shit.
Absolutely. And before we move on to the main event here, I just want to finish off my bundle by saying I think my favorite Tony Stark quip in this film would be when he meets Rocket early in the film and he says, honestly, until this very second, I thought you were a Build-A-Bear.
I think Rocket says, "Me too." Uh,
Yeah,
so
absolutely great times. Whew. All right. So Chris, would you like to just outline this exercise we're about to go through to examine our top moments?
totally. So again, in the interest of a media light and keeping ourselves disciplined, we've limited ourselves to five each. So we've got a top five list. We're just going to go back and forth, sharing what moved us during this particular watch. And in that way, together as a podcast, we'll come up with 10 great moments that I hope everybody enjoys celebrating. What do you think, bud? Do you want to go first?
I really appreciate your politeness, but I feel like I have dominated the opening minutes of this podcast, and I think I would like to hear from you first. I'm really excited to see where you decided to start this top five list.
Your instincts are good. I like to begin at the beginning, Randy, and so it's appropriate I should
Mm-hmm.
open this bit because I started with the cold open. My number five is the cold open, and then the opening logo and the needle drop. So it's not the Barton scene specifically on its own. That scene is good and it's powerful. It's a direct link to Infinity War, fine. But it's more of how this sets the overall tone, right? So I saw this as a strong like tone setting strategy when they took that Barton scene, which is so emotional and so heavy and such a gut punch to start the movie. And depending on how recently you've watched Infinity War, you just got your ass kicked. And then
Mm-hmm.
the movie opens with a gut punch. But then there's that Guardians of the Galaxy style needle drop that
Mm-hmm.
welcomes you into the opening credits. And then we're on the ship with Tony and Nebula. And before that gets heavy, it's a fun little montage. And it's familiar, the energy of it. You're in the MCU. They know this dance so well, and we're with them through every step. So yeah, that cold open, that tough scene paired with that song and that shift in tone really tells you what to expect from the film overall. This movie is layered. I think I said that we were going to pick five moments that we loved this time that we watched it, because I think depending on how you're feeling, where you're at in life, there might be a number of different ways that you can receive this movie overall.
Chris, I absolutely love that. And based on where you started us, I'm going to call an audible. I'm jumping a little bit deeper down my list than I intended to start, but I think that this follows up on two things that you've said already tonight really well. Um, I was gonna go with like a really, strong answer, but an expected answer, which is that chat between Cap and Natasha early in the film, where we are establishing the stakes. Cap is trying to get her to look on the bright side, and she does not want to hear it. Cap seems to want to move on, and he's instructing other people to do so. Natasha is not even pretending that she has any interest in moving on. But it feels great to see them be there for one another. You get this great line where Cap complicates things, by mentioning that he saw a pod of whales in the river, implying that, maybe there is some sort of environmental healing happening in the planet. He's certainly not supporting Thanos' actions, but he's doing his best to try to embrace this world that he finds himself in. And there we go. I think I just did it. But the thing I allegedly changed my choice to, uh, is in that opening sequence, we then go, to Tony Stark and Nebula, trapped in space. And we've got a lot of stuff from Tony, but you mentioned how important Nebula is to this movie. And there's this little moment where he's just teaching her how to play paper football. And the performance is so excellent from Karen Gillan in that moment. There's this apprehension about it, but you see this genuine investment in her face. Um, but it's mixed with this sort of sadness and confusion. Like she's enjoying this human moment, but her face is almost saying she doesn't think that she deserves it, right? And that's what Natasha's going through. That's what Cap is going through. That's going to be a theme in the movie. Um, so there we go. My first bundle.
Beautifully said, brother. Really beautifully said. And yeah, I mean, Nebula then will tenderly kind of place Tony in the pilot seat after she finds him
Hmm.
on the floor. She could have left him there. She's so human already. At the beginning of this film, you're seeing how much her journey, or how far along in her journey she really is. All right. So that brings me to my number 4. I wanted to highlight for me my first tears of the film. Didn't come where I expected them to. I don't think this is where they came the first time I watched, but I'm a dad
Hmm.
of a daughter. And so you've got Scott Lang, who's just emerged from the quantum realm, and he's making his way through like a post-apocalyptic. It's a very creepy, anxious moment for Scott. There's like the kid on the bike who can't even
Hmm.
answer him when he ignorantly asks what happened here. And there's all this anxiety that builds up to the moment where he sees his daughter and his daughter sees him. And it's been 5 years for
Hmm.
her. It hasn't been that long for him, but he's coming from this place of, like I said, anxiety, right? It's the way they
Hmm.
shoot that coming down the street. It puts the audience in that same spot. He's confused. And then here's his grown up daughter. You're so big, he says.
Hmm.
Um, this time watching it, I don't know. My daughter's getting older. I'm getting older.
Hmm.
I cherish our relationship. I want to be with her and for her for as long as I possibly can. And so, yeah, seeing Cassie like embracing her dad in that moment, who she's been missing for 5 years, like I couldn't help but think of my daughter, and it wrecked me. These
Hmm.
sons of guns, these filmmakers. So yeah, I mean, Ant-Man doesn't have the best presence in the overall film, but again, early on, he's so vital to, and this is such a vital emotional beat.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely beautiful and perfect, Chris. I'm so glad that you brought that up. And I'm really happy that I made you go first because once again, I'm going to call an audible. This was not necessarily in my top 5, but it fits the spirit of our conversation. We kind of on the fly in the moment here decided that we were particularly interested in healing in this film, right? You get that moment between father and daughter that's so pure and joyful and wonderful. Uh, and I was really surprised on this viewing of Endgame. There was one scene that I never had negative feelings about, but I don't think it fully hit me when I first watched the film in theaters, and it worked on me so much better 5 years later. And this is the scene between Thor and his mother.
Mm.
Now, I understand that Thor can be divisive. We had a big tone change for the character. Um, I personally am largely a big fan of that tone change. Um, but it is a lot, and to a certain extent, that Thor character has become a caricature of himself. I don't love every choice with Thor in this movie. I think the overweight Thor jokes are one of the things that are less effective for me in this movie than anything else. Um, including in this otherwise nearly perfect scene where, she ends by asking her son to eat a salad. However, the way he breaks down when he sees his mother, for whatever reason, I felt it more this time. And what got a couple tears in the corners of my eyes was just her effortless ability to recognize that there is something magical or supernatural happening and to just shift into this nurturing, motherly, protective role without skipping a beat. And she is there for him. Her words are ringing with him at the end of the film when he decides to give up being king of Asgard. And, even when he does a horrible job being subtle and he pretty much tells her she's about to die, she pretends that he has not spoiled it because she understands that her son needs her, and I really love the character for that. And yeah, I think again I was never down on the scene, but I think maybe I was a little more cynical about it in the moment 5 years ago, and I really felt it. And yeah, I'm happy I decided to push it up on my list.
Love that, brother. I think I highlighted in my list sort of parent stuff in general, and I wrote this one down too. He so vulnerably says to her, I really need to talk to you. And she just says, you can talk.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm your mom. I'm here. He's so comforted. It's so immediate. She's brilliant in that scene. Great pick, buddy. Okay, so for my number three, then it's a very different type of healing
Hmm.
that I want to celebrate. It's Scarlet Witch style healing.
Yes.
She heals in a way that isn't always advisable, I don't think, but she loves some vengeance. She has felt pain, and others will feel pain as well. And so when she has her moment with Thanos on the battlefield, I didn't want to pull much from the battle because there's a lot of great little individual character moments. They try to give everybody their time. But my gosh, I was almost never more on the edge of my seat, except for one other really obvious moment, but I'll save that one. Never more on the edge of my seat in the original viewing and in the rewatch. In the original viewing or in the rewatch, as when Scarlet Witch is ripping the armor from Thanos. He stands with her for a second, but she dominates that fight. She is pure power. She is pure fury, and he nearly feels her vengeance. She almost receives the ultimate healing before he rains fire.
Yeah, Chris, I absolutely love this pick. And when I think of things that hit me differently on the second watch, again, I was never down on Wanda or the Scarlet Witch. But on my first viewing, we met her in Age of Ultron. We didn't get necessarily a ton of good quality time with the character. We established that she was very powerful. She gets a nice scene with Vision that I more or less bought, but I don't know that I had enough time to feel super invested in at the time. And then in the intervening years, one thing I did was watch and absolutely love the series WandaVision. And by the end of that show, you know, Wanda had catapulted to one of my favorite characters. So to be able to reverse engineer and put that energy into watching that scene, I agree with you. It fully moved me. She has that great line delivery. Thanos says, "I don't even know who you are." And I believe she says, "You will."
You will. Oh, yeah.
And not only does she try to crush him under debris, but she ultimately lifts him into the air, and she seems to be disassembling his armor and or him. And like you said, he's so desperate, he has the ships just rain fire down on the battlefield. And
He-
that Wanda Power moment, just beautiful stuff. All right. I love the MCU, despite the fact that I've never been a big comics reader. I watched the X-Men animated series when I was a kid. Side note, also truly loving X-Men 97, but that's a story for another day. And, I kind of slept on these MCU movies for a while. I think I had mixed feelings about the X-Men films. I think I was a little bit out on superhero fare. There was nothing that drew me immediately to want to go see Iron Man when it first came out. And I get sucked into a genre world when they make me feel real world stakes. And as a result, I'm a big fan of the spycraft elements of the MCU. I don't know they always made the best choices when it came to things like Shield, or the more recent Secret Invasion, but I love our lower powered characters trying to go toe to toe with these super powered folks. I know he takes a lot of flack in the MCU, and he's, deservedly so, and he's not my favorite character, but, I genuinely do enjoy the character of Clint Barton. I appreciate that he wants to get home to Linda Cardellini, who amongst us would not want to do the same thing. And quite frankly, even though we don't get enough time with them over the course of the MCU, we are often told that Clint and Natasha share a special bond. And listen, Jeremy Renner's not even necessarily one of my favorite actors, but I really felt his chemistry with Natasha Romanoff on screen. And when they finally realize one of them will have to die, one of them will have to sacrifice the other in order to acquire the Soul Stone, not only did they make me feel it and feel for them and feel like we got a moment for our sort of underpowered spycraft characters, but that little mini battle sequence they have to see who can jump off the cliff faster was such a cool idea. It's such a fun fight. And there's some great emotional beats in the battle later on, but similarly, like honestly, like some of the Hawkeye little action set pieces in the final battle are my favorite piece, where he is just in desperation mode with his little bag of tricks, his little bag of arrows, jumping through the air, slicing and dicing some aliens, works for me better than a lightning bolt blast. So yeah, it's really that battle between Clint and Natasha. And also I think the hope he gets that she still sees enough good in him that she wants him to go on and go home and be with his family. And he'll get to go on to participate in another show that I loved, Hawkeye.
Hmm.
I don't know that they fully stuck the landing of that show, trying to tie it to Daredevil and whatnot, but I truly enjoyed that show and the stakes of that show. So, yeah, that Natasha and Clint scene really worked for me on the rewatch. So that's a number 3 for me.
Love that. Yeah, I think the MCU kind of forgot about Nat and Banner. This movie hints at it a few
Mm-hmm.
times, and you're kind of like, oh yeah, that was a thing. But they really got Clint and Natasha right, and I agree with you on the chemistry front. And also, um, when he's running the gauntlet at the end, he's running the tunnel with
Mm-hmm.
the Infinity Stones. Nice little horror movie moment. It all works. I agree. He's some of the most exciting action in the film.
I would change the hair.
Yeah.
Are we down to your number 2 already?
Down to my number 2 already. And
Look at us keeping it media light.
got to do it, buddy. I think we're being incredibly disciplined. We can pat ourselves in the back later. We're losing time. My number 2 actually has to call back to your chosen bit from the beginning, because that little boom from Rocket gets paid off in an uncomfortable way, I think, because my number 2 pick is when Ant-Man is standing at the balcony. The
Mm.
the shields have opened. Clint's phone is ringing. The birds are chirping, and Ant-Man smiles. And he says, I think it worked. And right as he says that, boom, it all gets blown to just smithereens. Smithereens that every character will survive, of course. But in that moment where we as the audience finally can like sort of exhale, you've just got through the intense time heist. It actually worked, but we didn't even get to enjoy that moment because Natasha was lost. So we have to process through that. So then the snap becomes our new hope, right? Hulk's snap becomes our new hope for a happy ending here. And right as you think you get it, right as Ant-Man begins to smile and we as the audience can exhale and smile a bit too, it's ripped away because Thanos
Mm-hmm.
is inevitable. And it was inevitable too that this movie wasn't going to end without a massive, massive battle scene. But for just a second, it worked.
I think your pick at number two also really worked because I'm honestly not sure why I didn't put it on my list because I was trying to think back. It's been, I believe, 5 years for me since I watched this film. And I was trying to think back to which moments really stuck with me. And, that there are some big, audience cheering moments that you hinted we might get to later on in this discussion. But as I was watching it, and we hit that moment you just described, I do remember how I felt in the theater during that brief moment of calm. You hear the birds chirping. It's also intercut with our girl Linda Cardellini ringing the phone to Clint, and he's about to pick up the phone too. Yeah, that moment of anticipation. We know that we've signed up for a much longer movie. We know that there's trouble to come. But yeah, that belief that it could all be okay. Beautiful stuff. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
All right. Number two is not necessarily a creative deep cut, but I'm going to try and keep it short, and I'm going to try and give us a chance to each smuggle a talking point or two in on the back of it. The short version of my number two pick is just the emotional moment of Cap, it's Sam. Can you hear me? On your left. And we start the extended montage uh, of characters coming through the portals to support Captain America just after he's tightened his broken shield back on his arm, ready to face this final battle with what energy he can. And we get all sorts of character intros. But I'm sneaking a little sub question in here, Kris. I thought we could each share like what was our favorite revelation of a returning character in that moment. And if you happen to already have one of these on your list, you can just smuggle in another one for now.
No, so my number one was not this, so I'm happy to share it because it was both hard and beautiful watching Chadwick come through the portal this time. I think this is the first time I've rewatched Endgame since his passing, and watching Black Panther reemerge. He's in just silhouette, and he's the first we get, right? And he's with the Dora Milaje. He's with Shuri, but it's Chadwick, right? And he's in silhouette because he's backlit, yes, by the magical portal, but then even once the portal sort of clarifies behind him, it's just a beautiful, beautiful sunlit landscape. And it's like he's stepping forward out of heaven itself to
Mm-hmm.
rejoin not just Cap in the fight, but to rejoin us. Um, yeah, so this time around, that character entrance, that revelation, as you put it, was the standout for me.
Yeah, that was one of my two candidates for this little mini category I threw at you. If you hadn't picked it, that's the one I would have picked as well. And the only thing I would add is that I had forgotten that Black Panther, Okoye, Shuri, they are the first ones through the
Mm.
portal. We hear Sam's voice first, and I won't take the time to unpack how tragic the loss of Chadwick Boseman was, but in a world where, we did not have to lose him, he was so clearly the person who's going to step up to like lead an Avengers team moving forward. That's so well established in this film, and getting that first through the portal billing was such a huge, huge, huge deal for me. And I'm so glad that we audiences got that,
Mm.
especially since poor Wakanda instantly became the battleground for all of humanity the second they agreed to share the resources with the world, which was maybe a little too real. But since you picked that one, I'll just quickly shout out the reunion between Tony and Peter Parker,
Mm.
Spider-Man. Peter still hasn't fully grasped what's going on. He kind of sort of knows 5 years have gone by. He's bringing his frantic, silly teen energy, and Tony just grabs him and hugs him. And it's this rare moment of no quip, no joke. You see this release of like this weight and pain. So lots of other fun intros, some more effective than others, but yeah, those are my two favorites. So
Okay. Well, mine is truly a piggyback. It's really just the culmination of your moment. This to me is the obvious number one. Um, but it starts, in my opinion, the build up to this moment starts earlier. So it is for me, of course, Avengers Assemble and the charge. It doesn't matter how many times I watch the movie, how many times I watch that scene, I will feel something every single time. And part of that is just like the beauty of what's on screen. You know, there's the score, all of it's working on your senses. Um, Part of it is the storytelling that's laid in there across all of those characters, but part of it really is squarely on the shoulders of Captain America in his delivery of that line in that moment. This is a character who has come so far from being the first Avenger, the man out of time, the Boy Scout, even to this like nuanced, just born of iron and all things true hero. Earlier, he's got no business being in the fight with Thanos. You know, Thor and Tony are barely hanging in. Thor's a
Mm-hmm.
god, and Tony has otherworldly armor, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Cap is just getting like ragdolled every time he gets near Thanos.
Mm-hmm.
He's got no business being there, but he stays in the fight. He never stops coming. And then Mjolnir and worthiness and lightning. And he's so creative with the shield and the hammer. All of a sudden, he's the most formidable guy on that battlefield. And Thanos has his hands full for a second. But ultimately, you know, Cap will still be human and he'll be beaten down by the Mad Titan. But he'll stand one last time before he hears a friend's voice in his ear. Before the portals open, he will stand one last time because he can do this all goddamn day. He tightens the broken shield, um, and then he's rewarded. For once, he's rewarded, and everybody's there at his back, and he gets to say the words, Avengers Assemble. And yeah, I'll feel something every time.
Beautiful, beautiful. And of course we get the moment that I would have told you was my favorite moment as I stepped out of the theater, which is, Cap calls Mjolnir to him. We get the payoff of the tease from Ultron. It spawns, a thousand memes. I love to answer the question online of, who's another fictional character who could wield Mjolnir. So yeah, that was such a special moment, and I remember the gasps from the audience. But that's going to bring me to my number one, and I'm just going to throw this all under the bubble of, you know, Tony Stark making the ultimate sacrifice. And it's a collection of parts. It's the snap itself. It's the delivery of "I am Iron Man," but not with the same sort of cocky hubris that we heard at the end of the original Iron Man film. He's still got some of the intonation from the song in there, but you've got weight and responsibility wired into it. And it's the snap itself, but it's also some really smart choices they made surrounding it. And that is, early in the film. Granted, it's in the 5 years earlier time period. We've got Tony recording these messages as the oxygen runs out on the spaceship. He's talking to Pepper Potts, explaining what she means to him, sharing his emotional intelligence that things are going to be okay. He still has not built this future with a daughter just yet. After Tony's death, we see he recorded his own eulogy prior to the time heist. And those moments are both wonderful in the sense that we get to see some great acting from Tony Stark without doing like an extended death sequence. It also gives me some confidence that, his daughter has got a rich archive of Tony recordings and, those little pearls. Shout out Tony's dad. You were on my list somewhere. When we do the full episode, we can dig into that. Um, but the thing I want to end on with this moment and why it matters so much to me is that this is the bravest moment in the MCU because when you make a comic book franchise, a genre franchise, a common complaint people will levy at you is that there are not clear enough stakes. There's always an out for everyone. We resurrect half of civilization. And, I'm not naive. I would not be shocked, you know, to see Robert Downey Jr. back in the Iron Man role for an appearance in some context at some point in the future. And if that happens, fine. But I don't need it because the bravest moment in the MCU is after the snap, our Tony is gone. He is not fully lucid or coherent. He is absent. He looks terrible. We get just enough in his eyes to know that he is hearing everyone, but that loss is real. There's not a last second joke. He gave us that eulogy, and he was kind of eulogizing himself 5 years earlier. And that was such a brilliant choice in this movie because it makes that loss feel real. And it's hard not to tear up at that. And I thought that was brave and not something I thought this movie would be capable of doing in such a graphic way. And I applaud them for it. So that is my number one.
Really beautifully stated. Couldn't agree with you more that the weight and power of that moment, the delivery of it all. Yeah, really well said, buddy.
Yeah, I forgot just how broken he is in that moment. I forgot that he was nonverbal.
Mm,
Yeah,
mm.
powerful stuff.
We did it. We got through 10 wonderful moments from Avengers Endgame. I think we managed to do it without hitting too many of the usual beats. I hope that there was a few nuggets in there that don't often get discussed. But do you want to do you have an honorable mention that you want to plug? Something that you wish you could have talked more about? And we'll save the rest for the big episode. But I've got one, so I'll let you go first.
Sure, I've got a list full of them, but the one I will settle for is one that's maybe not a flashy moment in the film, but I think it just reflects a philosophy and an attitude that means a lot to me. And that is when Tony shows up to the compound. He's decided to help with the time heist. He's going to make it happen. He's worked everything out. He gifts Cap the shield back after they're falling out, which is great in and of itself. But I'd forgotten this line of dialogue where he says, "It turns out resentment is corrosive, and I hate it." I'd forgotten that he said that, and that's a message that I think we all need to hear sometimes. I know it's a message I certainly need to hear in my life from time to time.
Amen, brother. Tony Stark ends up a very emotionally intelligent fellow. He's always been an intelligent guy, but he winds up quite wise by the end.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Good one, really good one. I had wanted to
Thank
talk
you.
about their moment when they called their audible. You had called a couple of audibles during this episode, and I wanted to say that I do trust you because that was such a great moment between Cap and Tony as well. But my honorable mention, and I had to call it that because, to be truthful, it it could have been my number one if I was a less responsible podcaster. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Watching this in hindsight, I think you talked about a couple of Disney Plus shows that have come out since Endgame that you've loved. Man, I love Loki. And when he takes the Tesseract, I'm like, oh, we're going to get 2 seasons of just phenomenal television because of that little moment right there. And so it could have been my number one overall, despite having very little to do with the actual plot of the film.
Perfect. Well, folks, we hope you enjoyed that light taste of our thoughts on Avengers. So be on the lookout for our full episode of the Avengers at some point in the near future. I believe in 1 week from today, you should be getting episode 2 in our New to Who series, where Kris and I took a look at possibly the most famous New Who episode, Blink. Kris really loved it, and I can't wait to share that with you. And while I'm talking about Doctor Who, that new season starting, I believe, on May 11th. So that would be tomorrow from when this is airing.
Whoa.
So Who fans, get ready for Shooty Gatwa full season. Can't wait. Kris, Before we go, do you have any social media info you want to share or projects you want to plug?
No projects to plug, but as ever, I'm over on Instagram just being goofy and gushing about my daughter. I can be found at Chris_Ingersoll. That's Chris like Kringle.
Perfect. And you can find me, Randy Elaine, on Twitter at Mr_Elaine, ALLAIN. You can also find me over at the Pop Break, where I do a little podcast called Every Pod You Cast, which is a deep dive into the discography of the Police. Thank you for joining us for this Media Light episode, and we will see you next time.